Hey guys, this is Taps Bathtub, and I'm going to talk about the combo deck I used to get into Top 20 Legend this season. I want to make sure I give credit for this deck properly, so the first I saw of this kind of deck was when Dark Wanix brought it to a tournament, like right after GVG released, and it had like Demon Heart in it and Baron Geddon, and it was a really interesting deck, and it performed okay. But someone who really saw the potential in this kind of deck was Zele, and he refined it. I think he claimed he had like a near 80% win rate with it on ladder, and he brought it to an ESL Challenger event and did really well with it. But for whatever reason, it didn't catch on a lot. Like, I haven't seen it very much since then. So I don't know of anyone else who's tried to adapt Demon Lock after BRM released other than a fellow named Amnesia SC, but he actually arrived at quite a different conclusion than I did after BRM. He has like Leroy's and Azure Drakes in it. It's a really cool deck, but I don't know if he wants people to share it or not, so I don't have a link to that deck or anything if you're curious. It's a really different deck, and I believe he was top 10 legend, finished top 10 legend in a last season with the deck. So it is very good. First off, some stats and what this deck is good and what it's bad against. So overall, I have a record of 29 and 10, which is 74.4% with this deck, and all of those games took place at Legend rank. So I'll just go through the classes one by one. Druid, I have a 75% win rate with 3 and 1. I believe that the matchup is not that good. I think I overperformed in some of those games just due to the nature of Druid and how they can pressure you with constant board control, and it's really hard for you to have board control over Druid, but if you can, you win. I wouldn't even say you're favored versus Druid, despite my record there. I have a 6 and 2, also 75% win rate against Hunter. Most of those were hybrid or mid-range, and I believe I had a couple of face hunters. Unfortunately, I didn't keep track of the individual archetypes, just the classes. This deck has a lot of healing, so it's pretty good against face hunter, although they can sometimes just outpace you and win the game. And then against hybrid hunter, we have like the Siphon Souls for high main, and we have an Owl for high main, and we have a lot of minions that they don't want to get frozen from Freezing Trap, which I think is a big deal, like Earthen Ring Farseer and Healbot. And even like the tokens from Imp Gang Boss can just negate the Freezing Trap, even though they don't do anything particularly positive for us. So I do think you're slightly favored against Hybrid Hunter. And then Mid-Range Hunter, pretty much the same as Hybrid Hunter, maybe slightly favored. Against Mage, I have 1 and 2. I have a 33.3% win rate. Against Freeze Mage, this deck is fantastic, I think, just because of the amount of heals. And the burst is just something that Freeze Mage can't deal with. They can freeze your board fine, but they have no way of stopping 24 damage from hand. They just have to let it happen. But against Mech Mage, this deck is not very good. We have the Darkbombs and stuff, but we're pretty light on the early game, and Mech Mage can just overwhelm you if you don't get the stuff you need in the early game. And also, whereas Shaman has Power Mace, which is good, but not as good against this deck as other decks possibly, Mage has Goblin Blast Mage, and we have like Implosion and Imp Gang Boss, so Goblin Blast Mage really makes the difference to push Mech Mage over the top over this deck. Against Paladin, I have a 2 and 1 record, 66.6% win rate. It's hard to say with Paladin. The Paladins I did play, some of them had kind of weird decks. I'd say it's about 50-50 versus mid-range Paladin, and it's probably favored versus Control Paladin. Against Priest, I have a 0-0 record because I did not face Priest. If I had to guess how this deck does against Priest, I would say pretty well, because they don't put much pressure on you, so they leave you plenty of time to draw your combo, and then you just have to do a little bit extra damage to them, and you can pretty much OTK them. Against Rogue, I have a 2-0 record. Both the rogues I faced were just pretty standard oil rogues. You have a lot of healing, so it's almost like the Control Warrior matchup versus Rogue. They have kind of a limited amount of damage they can do if they can't get something to stick, and they don't have that many minions that are meant to stick around. So it's basically about healing until you get to the combo, and then they're usually going to use their face to hit things, so they're not going to be above 24, and they don't have taunts typically or heals, so whenever you draw the combo and you get to 10 mana, you're pretty much good to go. Against Shaman, I have a 3-0 record, 100%. I think I may have overperformed slightly against Shaman as well. I think I mainly faced Mech Shaman. And Mech Shaman, it sort of depends on if you get an opener with enough answers or not. If they manage to get a Zap-O-Matic to stick and you somehow don't have a Darkbomb or an Implosion or a Hellfire, then you can pretty much be sunk. Against Warlock, I have a 9-4 record, which is 69.2%. Like I said, I don't keep track of which archetypes I faced, but I can tell you that Zoo is pretty hard but doable, and Handlock is amazingly easy. Handlock just does not have a way to deal with that much burst, and we have so many answers to their threats. We have an Owl for a Twilight Drake, we have 2 Siphon Souls for Giants, and we have a Big Game Hunter for Giants. And as far as Zoo goes, we did add in a fair amount of early game, so we can contest Zoo, and Zoo's getting a little bit slower, so the Siphon Souls are actually relevant in the Zoo matchup, because you might be able to Siphon Soul a Mal'Ganis or a Doomguard or a Sylvanas. So Zoo is, I would say not favored, but also not terribly disfavored. And then the last class, I have 3-0 against Warrior. I mostly faced Patron Warrior, but I would say this deck is favored against both types of Warrior. Patron is favored almost entirely just because of the card Hellfire. We run 2 Hellfires. Patrons often just rely on setting up boards that you can't deal with. And if you have Hellfire, you can deal with the board, and then they just wasted like 4 cards to do almost nothing. And another thing is you have so much burst, and they're often using their face to take out things, and they don't have that many taunts typically. So once you draw a combo, they're pretty much sunk. And then against Control Warrior, Control Warrior is kind of funny because they can heal up so far past the combo, but I've found that you're just able to exhaust Control Warrior's threats to the point that with the implosions and stuff, you just have so many small annoying minions on board that you just wear Warrior down and then maybe combo them at the end. It feels to me a lot like the Control Paladin versus Warrior matchup, where Control Paladin is very favored. But instead of Silverhand Recruits, you have 1/1 Imps, and you just wear them down, and it will often go to fatigue, but you'll often win in fatigue. So I'll just go through the cards. The first set of cards I want to talk about is the combo that is the namesake of the deck. So that is Arcane Golem, 2 times Power Overwhelming, and Faceless Manipulator. And that's 24 damage for 10 mana, exactly. But now that we have Emperor Thaurissan, that can be 24 damage for like 7 mana, or you can squeeze in some Dark Bombs along with it as well. So I really think Thaurissan improved this deck a lot, and it was already a good deck. I'll go through the rest of the cards. We got 2 Mortal Coils. This is kind of like it's just like a standard Warlock card. It's always good. It shores up your early game without being a negative in the late game because it cycles itself. 2 times Power Overwhelming, we already talked about that. That's part of the combo. You can use it to control the board with maybe a 1/1 token that you have left on the board, and sometimes that is the right move to make. But it is definitely more focused towards the combo than other decks. Like, you should definitely be saving it a lot more for face than, say, Zoo is with their Power Overwhelmings, where they usually use it to trade. 2 Dark Bombs, just really efficient removal. A Bloodmage Thalnos, I'm not totally in love with this card in this deck, but I do like it. We've got a lot of spells Thalnos shores up, and it also just cycles a card, and you want to be going through your deck, digging deep into your deck really quickly with this deck. Ironbeak Owl. I actually played for quite a while without an Owl in this deck, and if any control deck can go without an Owl, it's probably this one. Just because Sylvanas isn't as scary as it is with other control decks, because you often don't have very many actual good minions on the board that Sylvanas can steal. But Savannah Highbane has made a comeback, and that's what led me to put an Owl in. And Owl also helps you break through taunts with your combo, which is great. 1 Mistress of Pain. This is pretty much a card just for surviving Face and Hybrid Hunter, although it does some pretty good work in, say, Freeze Mage or Zoo matchups as well. A 1/4 for 2 isn't the best body. That's why we only have 1 of them. Arcane Golem, we talked about why that's in there. I very, very rarely use this without hitting face with it. Sometimes you have to just stay alive, and sometimes you do win games that way, but it's definitely intended to go face. Big Game Hunter, that's just a standard meta call tech card. Earthen Ring Farseer, I'm not in love with this card in this deck either. The extra healing's pretty relevant a lot, and the 3/3 body's fairly good. It just sort of shores up our early game a little bit more and makes us a little more survivable versus aggro. Then we got the Imp Gang Bosses. This is something I don't see in Combolock a lot, although I don't see Combolock a lot at all. But the thing about Imp Gang Boss is I think it's just too good of a card to not put in the deck like this. Like, even though having early board control and a bunch of tokens is kind of orthogonal to our game plan of drawing cards and doing a combo to the face, just the fact that Imp Gang Boss can keep you alive and keep stuff on the board and keep you from dying against Zoo makes it worth putting in the deck. Hellfire, I would definitely put 2 Hellfires in this deck, especially in the current meta. It's just so good against Patron. They basically have no answer for it. And it's good against mech decks as well. Just all around good against mid-range and aggro decks, and one of the combo decks, weirdly enough. Implosion, I'm really a fan of cards that develop the board while also dealing with your opponent's board, and Implosion does just that. So it's basically a way to just stay enough in the game on board that you can make it to the late game to do your combo. Twilight Drake, the point of this deck is to draw a lot of cards, so if you're going to be drawing a lot of cards and you need a 4-drop, Twilight Drake's a great choice. So that's why we have Twilight Drake in here. Anti-Healbot, you need a lot of heal in this deck just to stay alive, because it's about staying alive until you can push the combo out. It's sort of like Freeze Mage in that respect, except Freeze Mage uses secrets to do this. We don't have secrets available to us, so we use Healbots instead. Faceless, again, part of the combo, and again, something you should really be saving for the combo most of the time, although there are times when you use it not in the combo. Sludge Belcher, again, helps you stay alive. It also contests smaller minions, so just a really great defensive card. 2 Siphon Souls. 1 might be enough, but I like 2. Emperor Thaurissan, I already talked a little bit about how great this card is in this deck. Just lets you squeeze in more stuff on one turn. And it's a 5/5 body, which is acceptable for 6 mana. Black Knight, you could take Black Knight out of here if you want to. I kind of like it. I most of the time are just killing Sludge Belchers with it, and that's okay. It's not like an ideal target. Like, Sludge Belcher's been in the meta forever and Black Knight hasn't, because taking out a 3/5 with the Black Knight situationally is not quite enough to justify Black Knight. But the thing about this deck is that it draws so many cards and is constructed in such a way that it has a lot of space for tech cards. And lastly, I have Alexstrasza. I find this to be a pretty good card against control warriors. You just need to be able to get their health down to something reasonable near the end of the game. And it's also a good card against, like, hybrid hunters, I found, because turn 9 is about the turn where you're almost dead and you want to set your health back up to 15. Alex was a card that I believe was in Dark Wannix's original Combolock, but Zelay cut from it. But the reason I would put it back in is because Thaurissan also makes Alex better. You can actually, if you Thaurissan Alex and get it down to 8 mana, then you can have 2 power overwhelmings in your hand, and your board doesn't even have to be that big. You have to have like 7 power on the board, and even if they're at 30 health, you can Alex them and then double power overwhelming and kill them. So that's just a quick overview of all the cards. You can check out some of my other videos if you want to see this deck in action.